No. So we'll start. It's 3 minutes past. Hopefully others also can join soon. So today, who all remember we did which book last time? It's on the screen, but still, let's see. Who can quickly answer?
The answer is The Way to Krishna.
Yes, thanks, Manar. You're very, very observant. And also, you remember everything. That's good. So, On the Way to Krishna, that was our first book. And we are going to move on to our second one today from the first category, which you're seeing on this. Elevation to Krishna Consciousness. Very nice book. All these books are actually, towards the beginning of this list, they're small books, but how many weeks did we take to finish the first one? I think about 8 to 9 weeks. We finished the first one, right? So I think it would take about the same time. So let's get started into it. Elevation to Krishna consciousness. So before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and open up the book, and then we will say our pranam mantras, and then we will get started into our reading. So give me 1 minute, it's coming up. Okay, for some reason I'm not seeing this one on this list here. I thought we have all the books here.
Elevation to Krishna Consciousness is not on Vedas.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. Okay, so what we will do is, give me 1 minute. I think I should have the copy on my computer. I'm going to open up that. Yes, so I need to have a new file. So you all have your okay, so what we'll do today is, since it is an EPUB, I won't be able to open in the PDF, but it needs a special app. So I will read today from the book, from the actual book. And then next week, I'll have all those copies scanned and we will read from that, okay? So give me 1 second, I'm gonna quickly go grab that book. So here it is. Here's the book. And let's see. Are you all able to see this book here?
Yeah.
Okay. Elevation. It's a small book. It's very nice. So what I'll do is today I will read. We won't have it on the screen, but I will get the electronic version next week. So how many chapters are there in the book? There are 6 chapters. And then there is just a little bit about the author, our dear Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so we'll get started. And before we start, what are we going to do? We will say our pranam mantras. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Okay, so elevation to Krishna consciousness. The first chapter, I'll just give you a quick summary of the chapters that we are going to read. The first chapter is about choosing human and animal lives. And then the next one is the hard struggle for happiness. So the first book that we have read, if you all remember, that book was mostly based off what? On the way to happiness, right? And it talked so much about, it gave us very clearly the understanding of happiness. It gave us on the way to Krishna, right? We started from, the in search of happiness. We understood the difference between the happiness, the material happiness, and which is temporary, and the eternal happiness. We talked about how just, small or big things or any things or any endeavor that we are doing in this material world in search of happiness finally leads to, if it is geared in the right direction, it leads us to on the way to Krishna. And looking for happiness is a very natural thing for any jiva or any living entity, right? So this book is going to elaborate on hard struggles of happiness towards the peaceful society, knowing Krishna as he is, then knowing Krishna's energies, and taking to Krishna consciousness. So this is like a little more in depth of what we already have touched upon. So we have already touched upon these topics, but we will go in little more detail, okay? So the first chapter, choosing human and animal lives. That's the first chapter. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master who has opened my eyes, blinded by the darkness of ignorance with the torch of knowledge. Jai Shri Prabhupada. It is customary with the verse to offer obeisances to the spiritual master who enlightens his disciples in the matter of transcendental knowledge. The Vedic process does not involve research work. In mundane scholarship, we have to show our academic learning by some research, but the Vedic process is different. In the Vedic process, the research work is already done. It is complete, and it is simply handed down by the disciplic succession from teachers to student. There is no question of research work because the instruments and the means with which one conducts such research work are blunt and imperfect. So do you all remember in the last book, we talked about the imperfect senses? What did we talk about that? So how our senses are imperfect, right? We saw some illusory things, right? Can we conclude just based on what we see? No, right? Because we have limitations in our eyes. Can we conclude whatever we hear? Can we conclude whatever we feel, touch, right? So our senses, we discussed in depth, right? How our senses are imperfect. They are limited, right? So we cannot come to the perfect decisions or something that is beyond our perception of senses. We cannot conclude. We cannot make conclusions based on what we are, seeing, touching, or what we are perceiving. So that's exactly what Prabhupada is trying to explain here when we are talking about this knowledge, right? Elevation to Krishna consciousness, or any knowledge that we get from the Vedic scriptures. It is a inductive process, not a deductive process. So what does that mean? Is it comes down in a disciplic succession, like Guru Maharaj. We know our Guru Maharaj, right? He has received from his Guru, and he has received from his Guru, and from his Guru, and ultimately that is coming down from the Supreme Lord. So it's a perfect knowledge, right? Because he's the creator, he's the authority, right, of this knowledge. Now, further beyond, so when we're talking about this, the chapter is going to talk about what? Human and animal lives. So, who has created human beings? The Lord, right? Who has created the animal bodies of the animals and jivas, and made such arrangements for the Supreme Lord, right? So when we can't come to just our conclusions or our logic or our, because whatever, he's the creator, he's the source of everything, right? So let's see what this chapter is talking about. At this stage of our material existence, we are conditioned by many laws of nature. All conditioned souls are subject to 4 Vedas due to the imperfection of their senses. One defect is that the conditioned soul is certain to commit mistake. There is no man who does not commit a mistake. In India, for instance, Mahatma Gandhi was supposed to be a very great personality, but he also committed mistakes. 5 minutes before he came to the meeting at which he was killed, he was warned by the confidential associate not to go, but he persisted. To commit mistake is a natural in the conditioned state of life. Indeed, the popular saying has arisen to err is human, right? You've heard that sentence? So basically, what this paragraph is talking about, that we have a tendency to make mistake. Another imperfection of the conditioned soul is that he is sure to be illusioned. Being illusioned means accepting something which is not, taking some things to be factual. Every one of us is under the impression that we are these bodies, but actually we are not. Accepting the bodies to be the self is called illusion or Maya. And the third imperfection is that conditioned soul has a tendency to cheat. So the first imperfection that we have in our senses is that we have a tendency to make mistake. Second one, we have a tendency to be illusioned, right? And then the third one is that we have a tendency to cheat, and that's just naturally. Anybody, this is not a criticism, but anybody who is accepting a human body, they have this tendency by nature having coming into or being bound by this human body, by our mind, intelligence, and false ego that we are carrying along with this. Those things is where all these things reside, as imperfections reside in us. So the third one is that there is a tendency to cheat. Accepting the body is to be the self is called illusion of Maya. And then third imperfection is the conditioned souls have a tendency to cheat. We have often heard a storekeeper say, "Because you are my friend, I won't make a profit out of you." But in actuality, we also know that he is making at least 50% of profit. Otherwise, why would he be selling, right? There are so many instances of this cheating propensity. There are so many examples of teachers who actually know nothing but both theories in the word like perhaps or it may be, while in actuality they are simply cheating their students. And the fourth imperfection is that the senses of the living entities are not perfect. So what does the fourth one means? That they are limited. If we cannot conclude, if we can't see to a certain extent, we cannot conclude that there is nothing beyond. There is definitely something beyond. So similarly, all our senses are limited. That means they are not perfect. Our vision is so limited that we can see only thus far and, not very far or very near. In the eyes, we can only see a certain condition, and therefore it is understood that our vision is limited. Similarly, all other senses are also limited. It is not possible to understand the unlimited by these imperfect, limited senses. The conclusion is that the Vedic process does not encourage us to endeavor to learn the absolute truth by employing our present senses, which are conditioned in so many ways. If we are to have the knowledge, it must come from the supreme source, which is not conditioned by these four imperfections. That source is Lord Krishna himself. He is the supreme authority of Bhagavad-Gita, and he has accepted the perfect authority by so many, and he is the accepted authority by so many saints and sages. So what is it talking about? That how Lord Krishna is the supreme authority. So what is Prabhupada trying to explain here? He is trying to explain here that what the knowledge that we are getting, it has to be bona fide. If somebody comes up with their own imaginary theory, would that be like an authoritative knowledge? Would it something that we should accept it without any or the way we say it is like, could we accept it blindly? No, but if it is coming from an authority, then obviously then it makes it an absolute knowledge, right? Those who are serious students of Vedic literature accept authority. Bhagavad-Gita, for example, is not the scholarly presentation which arose out of so much research work. It is a perfect knowledge. So is Bhagavad-Gita a research work? Is it a research work of anybody who somebody has put together and wrote some papers or thought of it? No, it is being given, right? It is an authoritative knowledge. It's being spoken directly by Lord Krishna. So that's what Prabhupada is trying to emphasize here, the authority of the knowledge. So it is a perfect knowledge, and that was taught by Lord Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And we receive information from it in the previous ages. Sri Krishna also taught it to the sun god Vivaswan, and it was handed down from the time immemorial from Vivaswan by the disciplic succession. So the verse Imam Vish, what is the verse that quotes this? Bhagavad-Gita 4.1, right? Imam Vishvasvate yogam proktavanaham avyayam Vivaswan mannave praha manorichvaku abravit. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ichvaku. If we study Bhagavad Gita according to the academic knowledge or according to our own mental speculation, we are certainly to commit mistake. It is not possible to understand Bhagavad Gita in this way. It is necessary to follow certain carefully in the footsteps of Arjuna. In previous ages, due to interpretation and the mental speculation, the real purport of Bhagavad-Gita was lost. Therefore, Krishna re-established the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita. So what is that verse? Lord Krishna says that whenever there is decline in religion and whenever there is lost, dharma is lost, then I come again, right? Who remembers, who knows that verse? Yada yada hi dharmasa. We all know this verse. Very, very popular and commonly quoted, right?
I know the verse.
Do you know that verse, Manahar?
Yeah.
Very nice. So in conjunction to that verse, here Lord Krishna is saying in the same chapter, 4th chapter, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarishayo vidusa kalene namahata yogo nashta parantapa. The supreme science was thus received through the disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood in that way. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it appears, to be lost. That very ancient science of relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee and as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand this transcendental mystery of this science. Okay. So two things to emphasize here, right? First one, that whenever we know that there is decline in religious principles, that means the knowledge is lost. Lord comes again and again to revive, right? And to re-establish the religion or the principles of religion. And then secondly, who gets opportunity to be eligible to get that knowledge? What is Lord Krishna saying in this verse? That because you are my devotee and a friend to me. So Arjuna, who did Lord Krishna speak Bhagavad-Gita? There were so many people on the battlefield. How many people were there on the battlefield?
Thousands of people.
There were a lot of people actually, and that's the whole point. We know that Mahabharata is the biggest of war, and that's why it's the name given, right? Mahabharata. There were 11 akshahuni. That's the unit of the number of soldiers on Arjuna's on Duryodhan's side, and 9 akshahuni sena, like that again number, which is like a very, very large number. Those many people were there on the battlefield, right? And then there were so many other great personalities. Bhishma Pitama, Karan, Duryodhan was there, Shakuni was there. On this side, all the other Pandavas, they were there. Dronacharya was there. So many people. All these are great personalities, right? Why was only Arjuna chose to get the knowledge? Because Arjuna, what Krishna is saying, that you are my devotee and a very dear friend. He was very surrendered to the Lord. He had that connection, he had that bond, right? In the last book, we learned that when we understanding we are the souls, what we have to do is we have to revive our relationship back, which we have forgotten, right? We remember the relationship of this life. Do we remember the relationship of our last lives? In the last life also we were there. We were, somebody would have been our parents, somebody would have been our sisters and brothers and friends, right? And all other relationships, children and all other things, right? But do we remember those? And before that also we were there, because Krishna is saying in 2nd chapter, right? What was that verse? There was never a time that you did not exist. There will never be a time that we will not exist, or these kings in future, right? So we are eternal beings, right? And we don't remember even our last life, or even before that, or what to say our eternal, we have completely forgotten. So Krishna, and we have to revive that relationship back. And Arjuna was on that level. He already had that relationship with the Lord in the mood of surrender. So that's what makes Arjuna eligible to get this knowledge. So let's continue. Thus, whoever follows the footsteps of Arjuna approaching Krishna in the spirit of devotion can understand the purpose of Bhagavad-Gita, as well as all other Vedic literature. There are 4 Vedas. What are the 4 Vedas? Who knows? Who knows the... And so first of all,
I know the
Rigved,
Vedas, but I
Samaved,
don't know the-
Yajurved, and
Atharva Veda.
Atharva.
Very nice. Now, all these 4 Vedas, you know that this is, what is Vedas, first of all? It's a complete body of knowledge, right? Complete body. Everything that ever could exist is described in Vedas to its fullest extent, like right from the source to the end. So Vedas is the complete body of knowledge. Then there are 108 Upanishads. So all those Vedas were concluded in what? In small sutras, and those are called what? Vedanta Sutras. And then, so all the Veda summary was captured in those small sutras, and those are called Vedanta Sutras. Then all that summary also, it was still so vast. Vedas are so vast. Indra took his time of 100 lifetimes. And you know how big is Indra's life? Our 1 year is Indra's 1 day. Our 1 whole year is Indra's just 1 day. And it took at least 4 or 5 lifetimes. He still could not finish reading the Vedas. Vedas are huge because everything is there in Vedas. Then all that summary captured in the Vedanta Sutras was also very intricate. So all that summary was also then, there was a concise, even from that summary, there was the conclusions of those summaries were documented or written in Upanishads. So there are 108 Upanishads. And then later on, there were 18 Puranas. But when Lord Krishna came, he spoke this Bhagavad Gita, just 700 shlokas. We have 700 verses in Bhagavad Gita.
He said it in 40 minutes.
Yes, so 700 shlokas, he described all the knowledge that, we need to go back to Godhead. So Bhagavad Gita is so important and so nice, spoken by the Lord himself. So there are 108 Upanishads, including the Ishopanishad, Katha Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, and as well as Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita. These literature are not meant for any particular class of men, but for totally of a human society. All societies can take advantage of Vedic knowledge to perfect human life. As pointed before, in the human life is not meant for sense gratification, but for understanding the God, the universe, and our own entity. For Vedic literature, we can understand that this material knowledge is only a partial manifestation. This material world is only a partial manifestation of the complete creation of God. The larger portion of God's creation is found in the spiritual world of the Vaikunthas, and above and beyond this material nature is the superior nature, and that is, as Sri Krishna states, right, in Bhagavad Gita, Bhumi Apo Nalo Vayu. What does Bhumi means? Earth. Apo means the air. Nalo means Apo means the ether, and Nalo means the water. And no, sorry, I'm making a mistake. Bhumi, Apo, Nalo, Vayu, Kham. Okay, so Bhumi, Apo means fire, sorry. Bhumi, then Apo means fire, Nalo means water, then Vayu means air, and then Kham means ether. So it goes subtle, 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 and subtler. And what is Lord Krishna saying? That these 5 things, and then other 3 things. What are those 3 things? Mana, Buddhi. Buddhi means intelligence, and Mana means mind. Evacha, Ahamkara, and then the last one is the identity, or we call false ego. Iti me bhinna prakriti ashtada. These are how many total? 8. So 8, these things have, these have come, he's the source. Krishna is saying, I'm the source of all of this, and they have come from me. And our bodies are made of these 5 things, right? Earth, fire, water, air, and ether. And then we also have mind, we have intelligence, and then we have, we have an identity that we misunderstand, that we are this body. So that's false ego. So this Krishna is saying that if a person is not understanding that, this material world is, if they think that this material world is the only thing that, and they identify everything in connection to this material world and this body, then they are not on the absolute knowledge level. So let's read further. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. All together, these 8 comprise my separated material energies. So these have come, but they are separated from Lord Krishna. Besides these inferior energy, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mine, which is of living entities who are struggling with this material nature and sustaining this universe. There are many material universes clustered together. So here is Krishna saying, how many universes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are many, many, millions and millions. You know how many universes? Each pore of the body of Mahavishnu emanates one whole universe. And can we imagine the size of one universe? We don't even know the size of one universe. All we know is just 9 planets around the Earth. And that's not even full universe. There is so much beyond that.
It's only about space.
Yes, so what is Lord Krishna saying here? That this material universe has come from the Lord, right? All this universe, there are many, many material universes clustered together, and all these universes constitute the material creation. Beyond this cluster of the countless material universes is the spiritual sky, which is also mentioned in Bhagavad-Gita. So beyond this material universes, there is a spiritual sky, and that's where is the abode of the Lord, which is eternal, right? There is no need to take, this whatever suffering we have with this body. We feel hungry, we feel grouchy, we feel angry. This all things are because we have accepted this body, and we experience that because of having this body. So, and what is Lord Krishna saying? What is that universe? What is that spiritual world like? Na tad bhashyate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mana mama. See, all these shlokas are so nice. When you listen, you should try to, read this sometimes. These are very commonly, those 108 shlokas that we have from Bhagavad-Gita. They're really, really nice. If you learn those shlokas slowly, gradually, you will that, it's still so, Bhagavad-Gita is already so concise knowledge, right? That's what we are talking about. And this 108 shlokas are really, really important shlokas. If you read that, really, that will be nice for you to understand. And, when we are quoting these, it gives us very good realization of, what Prabhupada is trying to explain here, what Lord Krishna is explaining us. Okay. What is the meaning of this shloka? Let's read the translation. That abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by electricity, and any one who reaches it never comes back to this material world. The superior nature, which is beyond this material nature, is eternal. There is no history of ever having begun. It has neither beginning nor the end. So all these quotes are from Bhagavad-Gita. These are not just, part of any imagination or conclusion. These are actual verses that we are reading from Bhagavad-Gita. And Prabhupada has put so nicely all this together to make us understand one thing, that when we are coming into this human body, how important it is to come to the knowledge, to come to realize this absolute knowledge, right? Which is authoritative. That's why Prabhupada started first talking about the authority. It is not an imaginary knowledge. Bhagavad-Gita is Bhagavad-Gita imaginary. We said, right? We talked about that. No, it is not. It's been directly given from the source who has created all this, who is a source of everything. And so let's keep reading. There is another eternal nature which is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and it never annihilates. When all this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. The supreme status is called unmanifested and infallible, and it is highest destination. Going there, one never returns from that. That is my supreme abode. Bhagavad-Gita, 8th chapter, 20 and 21st verse. Lord Krishna is talking about, he's revealing us his own abode, that where he is. How would we ever know if we don't even know our full of our own universe? How many planets do we know are around Earth? There are 9 planets around Earth, right? That we know of. Venus, starting from Mars, Venus, then Earth, then, starting from Mercury, then Venus, then Mars, then Earth, then Mars, then Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. You all know these 9 planets? And thus, that's the extent we know. What is beyond those planets? Do we know what is beyond those planets? We don't know.
The spiritual world?
No.
Yeah, I do.
This is just one, maybe just one fraction of our own universe. That's just like these planets, 9 planets that we are seeing. This is just fraction of our just one universe. But there is much more beyond, even in our own universe, that we don't know. And then what are we talking about? Other universes, all so many. And in that verse we just read, right, that there are clusters of these universes. So you all should, I'll give you a homework today. You have to read these 2 verses, very important verses, chapter 7, verse number 4th and 5th. Okay. You will see what Krishna is saying there. Lord Krishna is saying there that there are these millions and millions and clusters. Cluster is even bigger word than the millions, right? There are these clustered universes together, and all these constitute the material creation. So that's just material creation. We don't even know our whole universe. What do we know about the spiritual world? How can we ever come to know. How can we ever come to know? Unless Lord Krishna himself reveals it to us. And that's what, when we are reading Bhagavad-Gita, when we are reading this by our mercy of our Gurudev, we are getting this perfect knowledge. And this coming into this human body, this is ultimately, we have that intelligence to understand. But then where do we waste all that? In just gratifying our own senses and just, getting some temporary happinesses? Is that like a human being or an animalistic propensities? So that's what this chapter is talking about. So let's keep reading. The Vedic religion of Varnashram Dharma is also called eternal because no one can trace its beginning. The Christian religion has the history of 2000 years, and the Mohammedan religion has a history of 1300 years. But if we try to trace out the origin of Vedic religion, we will not be able to find the beginning. Varnashram Dharma is accepted as an eternal religion of the living entity. Remember, we talked about Varna and Ashram during our last book. There are 4 Varnas and there are 4 Ashram. So based on, and which is based on what? Is it based on Janma? Is it based on the birth? No, it is based on the quality that we acquire, gunas. It is also based on the activities that we do. So this Varnashram, the science of this soul and the Supreme Lord, this is eternal. This knowledge is eternal, and this way, that's what Prabhupada is pointing here, that this Varnashram Dharma is accepted as an eternal religion of the living entity. We often say that God created this material world, and this means that God existed before the world. Since the Lord was existing before this material manifestation. Hare Krishna, Neve, are you listening quietly? Okay, so let's listen quietly. We often say that God created this material world, and this means that God existed before this world. Since the Lord was existing before the material manifestation, he is not subject to this creation. If he was subject to this material laws of to the laws of this material world, how could he have created it? Right? That the Lord is simultaneously identical with his creation, and yet he exists, his completeness apart from it, as stated in Bhagavad-Gita. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktat Murtina Matstani Sarvani Bhutani Machaham Teshu Avasthita. So let's do just one more paragraph and then we'll pause and see if anybody want to share anything. Or
what's the homework again?
The book is Elevation to Krishna Consciousness. Okay. So in the first chapter, when we're talking about elevation, first of all, what do we have to understand? That human body, the first chapter that we are reading, that we have this human body and animal lives. We are trying to understand the difference between being a human being and being an animal. I mean, not only just the bodies, but what about the consciousness? Bodies are different for animals and human beings, but what about the consciousness? So when we are talking about elevation, first of all, we have to elevate what? Our consciousness, because Lord has already given us elevated bodies, right? The bodies have, we are able to do so many things. We are able to talk, we are able to read, write, communicate. Animals are not able to do all that. So we have elevated bodies. But what about the consciousness? So this book is talking about elevation to Krishna consciousness.
Okay, but what is the homework?
The homework is the 7th chapter, shloka number 4 and 5. You have to read. Okay, that's the basis of this chapter.
In Bhagavad-Gita?
Yes, Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, because I don't have elevation to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, no, these shlokas are from Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada has quoted, this book is very small, but mostly shlokas from Bhagavad Gita, okay? So these are Bhagavad Gita shlokas that we are reading. Okay, so the next let's keep reading. In my transcendental form, I pervade this creation. All things are resting in me, but I am not in them. Again, everything is created, does not rest on me. Behold my mystic opulence, although I am the maintainer of all living entities, although I am everywhere, still myself is very source of this creation. Actually, we are all spirit souls and are intended to associate with God in the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable spiritual planets and innumerable spiritual living entities. However, those are not fit to live in that spiritual world are sent to this material world. So who is sent to this material world? Those who are not fit to live. And that's the answer, to this. Why do we have to elevate to Krishna consciousness? Because we have to make ourselves pure. We have to make ourselves perfect. And that's when we will be eligible to enter the spiritual world, to gain our original swarupa, original form back instead of this body. Because now we are in this body, next life we will have another body, next life we will have another body, and who knows what kind of bodies we will be getting based on our consciousness and the things that we have done, the karma that we have. Do we want to keep going through this cycle again and again and again and again? No. So that's why we need to elevate ourselves. And here is what, this is a very good concluding point for today. Actually, we are all spirit souls and we are intended to associate with God in the spiritual sky. There, where there is innumerable spiritual planets and innumerable spiritual living entities. However, those who are not fit to live in this spiritual world are sent to this material world. This very idea is expressed by the Milton in Paradise Lost. There's a book. This book I don't know about, I haven't read, but Prabhupada is mentioning that book here, referring that book. This is also mentioned in that book. Although the spirit soul who have voluntarily accepted this material body, and by accepting it, they have also accepted the threefold miseries of the material nature. Exactly when we accept it and how we accept it, it cannot be traced out. And no one can trace out the history of when this conditioned soul first began accepting these material bodies. At present, Darwin's theory of evolution of the organic matter is very prominent in the institution of the higher learning, but there is information given by the Padma Puran that other authoritative scriptures of the living entities, spiritual evolution is one bodily form spiritual evolution is from one bodily form to another. So there are how many species of life? 8.4 million species. That includes all animals, all types of plants, all kinds of aquatics, birds, beasts, right? How many types? 8.4 million. And Lord Krishna is saying that so at present, everyone is giving stress to this Darwin theory, but our Vedic literature, there is an immense information about the different species. Darwin expresses the opinion that species are evolving from lower forms of life, but This is not the whole truth. The soul may progress from lower form to the higher form, but at the beginning of creation, all species were created by Sri Krishna as indicated in Bhagavad-Gita. Okay, so we'll take a pause here and we'll continue. We almost finished half the chapter as we usually do, and we have about 3 more pages to go. But I want you all to share what you heard today, or any questions you have, or would you like to share with your friends, or you learned today, anything. Go ahead, Manohar.
I learned there are millions of universes.
Clusters of universes, yes.
Yeah, and it took Indra 4 or 5 lifetimes to read all the Vedas.
Yes, even in that, Manohar, he wasn't able to finish. And all that knowledge is concisely given by Lord Krishna in one book, and that is Bhagavad-Gita. So you see how important that is?
Yeah.
We have to, would you want to learn the shlokas from Bhagavad-Gita? You should try to memorize all the shlokas from Bhagavad-Gita. You know, there are children who have memorized whole Bhagavad-Gita, and they would say all the shlokas by like chapters and chapter-wise chapters.
I have a friend, he lives in Vrindavan and he knows all the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita.
Very nice. Yes, anything else, Manohar?
No.
Yes, Jyotsna, you have to share. Jyotsna? Jyotsna,
yeah,
yeah.
I learned that like Lord Indra, I didn't know, I thought that before he became the king of heaven, I thought he read the Vedas then to become the king of heaven, but I didn't know he still reads the Vedas.
Yeah, king of Swargaloka, that is Indra, the king of all the demigods, but still they are living entities like us, but they are empowered beings by the Lord. They have been given special superpowers. And how a person can get into the Swargaloka, how one can get into a heaven, only by pious deeds. Also, one can easily get into the Swargaloka. So getting to a heaven is not the highest destination. Getting to Swargaloka is not at all the highest destination, because if person does pious activities, and there are certain numbers of yagyas they perform, like 100 Ashtame yagya, something like that, they say, they can easily get into the Swargaloka. But is it just what happens when all those pious deeds? There is a shloka in Bhagavad Gita, I don't know which chapter, but we will certainly read in our next class. We'll read that when the pious deeds are all exhausted, it's like a bank balance, right? We have a bank balance, and when we keep spending from that bank balance, one day the balance will become zero, right? So when all the deeds are exhausted, the pious deeds, then the person is put down again into this material world. So not that, just by acquiring knowledge, if one has been perfected, that's like a very, very high thing. So yes, Indra has acquired that position by the pious deeds, and he is also still trying to elevate from that, because if they don't elevate, even these demigods, so they are also living entities like us, and if they don't elevate to perfect themselves, they could still fall down. And we know that story of Indra, how he gave so much rain in Vrindavan, right? He was doubting Lord.
He was trying to flood the whole Vrindavan and destroy it. Vrindavan got flooded, but it didn't be destroyed and all the Brajvasis were under the Govardhan hill, so nothing happened to them.
Right. So Lord Krishna protected, and then he realized that he did not understand the supremacy of the Lord. So even Indra, it is very, even person if who can reach, reaching to the heavenly planets, it's not at all difficult. But having that pure devotion by the mercy of the Lord and Gurudev, that is something very, very rare. Even rare that even demigods don't have that. Very nice. Thank you, Jyotsna. You want to add anything else, Jyotsna?
No, thank you, Mataji.
Very nice. Okay, anybody else? Okay. So we'll end here. We'll say our...
Mataji, can I share?
Yes, go ahead, Mika.
So, I never knew that people who are non-devotees, they can also like set examples for us, like the book Paradise Lost that Milton wrote.
Yeah. In that book, Prabhupada is saying that he has explained that, how soul comes back. And, that's accepted universally. We know all that, but, Prabhupada has mentioned, referenced that. Okay.
Like I have a friend, he's not a devotee. He and plus he's a meat eater and he teaches me a lot of stuff.
Okay, so we'll end here and then we will continue next week. So let's say our prayers and then we'll end. Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Prabhupada jai.
Kiran Mataji.
Okay.
Bye.
Hare Krishna, Guru Shri Prabhupada. We'll see you again. Hare Krishna.